Welcome on in, everybody, to yet another episode of Arches. Now, last episode, we just met up with Brian, and I assume that we are now trapped with Brian, which I am seriously not looking forward to. Brian is the absolute scariest character of any VN I've read, so without further ado, let's begin. Cameron sits on the table as the bear busies himself near the stovetop with the back to the coyote. Again, the coyote contemplates leaving, either asking Brian again or just walking out the door. Another glance toward the window confirms the raincoat monster is still out there, this time standing high in the trees, perched on a branch, still watching. Cameron quickly looks away again. He feels deep down if he leaves, another terrible thing is going to happen. While he believes the bear's story about what happened, something about this trailer is extremely uncomfortable, making him even more anxious. He thinks it must have something to do with his upbringing, the long, narrow space feeling familiar in the worst ways. It's like suddenly falling ill, and being reminded of all the awful things one has to say when they're sick. Meanwhile, Brian is chattering about how chamomile is particularly effective when it comes to anxiety, and Cameron vaguely wonders if why he's moving around so much if he's just making tea. Mostly, though, Cameron is just trying to think clearly, get his thoughts to line up correctly through the fog that he feels still clouding his brain. He's probably drugging Cameron, dude. It's making him extremely tired, and a couple of times the coyote's convinced that he's still dreaming. It's almost like he's high again, but without any of the positives of being high. His anxiety is already calming down, though, despite the worry that whatever was in that forest might have done some kind of damage to his brain. He focuses his thoughts on Devon, trying to think clearly. Would the bear really leave him alone like this? He could have at least left him a message to let him know that this is what he wanted. That Cameron is safe in the situation. But Cameron also knows that it wouldn't have been all that practical. If Devon was really in a hurry, which he definitely would have been, he would have left him behind if he knew it was for the best. And if he knew the situation was safe. Where are those two right now? Because Devon is very much alive. He's probably hidden somewhere in this goddamn trailer, dude. There really isn't a way he could have left a message anyway, except for maybe a text, but with no phone and no service. If this Brian guy really wants to help him, though, he should have gone to the highway instead. He has to have a car, right? It's not like he can just survive out here in an old trailer. Cameron fixes his face into a pleasant smile, knowing that it seemed to set the old bear at ease whenever he did. Do you have a car? Brian, seemingly absorbed in what he's doing, glances back. Well, I kinda share a truck with another guy in town. He happens to be out of town with that truck right now. Of course he would be, right? Oh, okay. Brian smiles at him again. I can see why Daniel likes you. You're a friendly kid. Oh, you mean Devin? Oh, shit, yeah. The brain doesn't remember things like it used to. You're fine. Cameron stares at the table, feeling that exchange was very strange, but it's hard to think through the cloudiness. Despite the dulled anxiety, the feeling is worrying him more and more. I'm actually feeling really weird. I'm so tired. Well, considering what happened to you, that makes sense. Not to pry, but do you do any drugs? No, not anymore at least. I mean, I had some weed like hours ago, but that should have worn off by now. Brian shrugs. People always say weed isn't a big deal, but it's probably what fucked me up the most back when I first tried it. Cameron listens to the sound of liquid being poured into a cup. Yeah, I don't think I like it, but I shouldn't still be high, right? Oh, that's actually a good point. He could be referencing another name. Oh my god. He shouldn't, but after my first time smoking, I felt high for fucking years after, even when I wasn't touching the stuff. Cameron feels a prickle of worry underneath the haze. Years? Yeah, what's it called? Depersonalization? Made me feel like my own paws were my own, and everything looked all weird and distorted, like a filter was in front of my eyes. Cameron vaguely recalls some of his own friends describing the exact same thing, even when their trip was supposed to be over. He experienced it himself while he was under the influence of various dissociatives. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. Having the same experience when he's supposed to be sober is borderline terrifying, though. Weed does that? His worry and panic breaks through the surface for a second, and he feels like, for a moment, he surfaced from the muddy depths of his confusion before slipping back under. He can't live in a dream for the rest of his life. But what even is this life, sitting here in a trailer with an old, slightly smelly bear? How did he even get here again? Where's Dev? Oh shit. Cameron suddenly grips the table, paw shaking as he feels as if he's lifting out of his body somehow, and that he has to hold on to something to remain in place. Hey, you're right, kid. Here, Brian ambles over to his fridge, opens the freezer and pulls out the ice tray and drops a few cubes into the mug, the ice clinking loudly. He stirs it for a few moments, then turns back to the trembling coyote. Albeit I mind the ice, but it'd be cool enough to drink now. Still confused and terrified and just wanted something to do, to focus on, Cameron reaches out for the mug the bear is holding out to him. He takes it from a trembling paw, gulping it down. It's filled with honey and a strong taste of ginger, and it's unlike any chamomile tea he's had before. The amount of honey is surprising, and he briefly wonders if it's a bear thing, even though Devin never seemed to have much of an affinity for it. Still, Cameron doesn't get the full flavor of the concoction until he's finished it. As he exhales, an odd nutty taste mixed with what Cameron can only describe as dirt lingers on the back of his tongue. Cameron frowns at the bizarre, terrible tea. He can't help but pulling a face as he looks into the mug, a thick round glob of honey remaining at the base while dark particles slowly collect around it. Yeah, there's something more in that tea. It's distracting enough that his panic attack is terminated before it can really begin. Brian laughs. Sorry about that. I like to add in kava root to soothe anxiety too. Should have warned you. I don't know, can a drug taste like nuts? Cameron had thought the taste was somehow familiar, but he supposes that any kind of root would have an earthy, bitter taste. Oh, it's okay. I just wasn't expecting it. I read about kava a few times when I was looking for ways to help with anxiety. Never tried it though. Oh, get ready for it to change your life. It got me off my chill pill meds. I do have some leftover bars if you need something stronger though. Xanax? I'll wait and see. While that would be nice, Cameron already feels like falling asleep, so it doesn't seem like the best idea. While he mostly believes in the bear's story, he doesn't want to be completely unaware of what's happening right now. I'm guessing you have some experience with it before, huh? Uh, Cameron frowns at the table, not sure what to say. He doesn't really want to discuss his past with this stranger, even if the guy seems like he would understand. Brian puts his paws up like he's showing that he's unarmed. Hey, I don't judge, kid. I was in that lifestyle for most of my life before I started turning things around. While Cameron is still cautious, he doesn't want to make it seem like he's suspicious. It doesn't feel like the best idea to sour things between him and the only other person with him in the middle of the desert. Yeah, I did a bit of everything in middle school and high school. Only thing I got hooked on was opioids, though. Oof, you went half the country, kid. That's a rough one. Tiredness is starting to plateau, if not recede slightly, and Cameron feels an odd but welcome sense of empathy towards this bear. It must be the kava kicking in. Poison that tastes like almond. That's probably what it might be. Brian's face appears a bit more defined and clear, and there's a warmness in his eyes. It's my first drug, too. Experimented with everything else because I was trying to find something less addictive and harmful. Brian shakes his head. That's the problem with it. There ain't much out there that makes you feel that good. That's what I'm told, anyway. Brian chuckles. I took one of my dad's hydros and ended up puking my guts out for hours. Guess I'm lucky I can't keep them down. Cameron thinks about that, about how nice it would have been if he had become violently ill whenever he tried opioids, or any drug for that matter. Yeah, I'd say that's some good luck. I quit college and I haven't done it since, though. Good for you. Brian gazes down at the nose at Cameron, starting to frown. Cameron's ears twitch as he senses a sudden change in mood. Now, I don't mean to bring this up again, but did your visions get more intense when you did heroin? At first, Cameron wants to correct the bear and say he's never done heroin, but stops as he thinks back. Of course, his visions get worse whenever he was on certain drugs, including opioids, but he had assumed back that they were just agitating his already present delusions. It was only today that he made the connection between drug usage and hallucinations or visions. Yeah, actually, a few times on the other stuff too. Does that happen to you? Definitely. Again, the feelings of empathy grow in the coyote's chest. There are others like him. Just like him. Maybe I'm not going crazy then. I'll keep going back and forth on that. Brian chuckles a bit. Well, not normal crazy anyway. Say, Brian looks carefully at Cameron again, and the coyote is almost distracted by the glow that seems to be emanating from the bear's eyes. Oddly enough, the intensely vivid and defined fur seems to be rippling, as if blowing in the wind even though they're inside. Also, the music just stopped. Is this Kava? You ever tried something more trippy, like acid or shrooms? Cameron shifts uncomfortably at the last word. Yeah, both. Acid was fine, but nothing weird happened. Shrooms just kind of fucked me up and saw all kinds of things. That's too bad. That one can be a real eye-opener. Oh, Cameron isn't sure what to say, feeling just a bit uncomfortable again. But yeah, most drugs make you see more things. Only ones that don't are stims. That's why so many people here got into meth. Brian chuckles again, but this time it sounds a bit dark, sinister even. Only problem with that meth is it makes you see shit, but only because it makes you go crazy. Arches and half circles. Yeah. Cameron looks back down at the table. He wonders about his mother again, and maybe she was like him. Maybe she took the stimulants because she was just trying to stop the visions, but ended up starting a wave of hallucinations and delusions instead. Cameron watches the wood grain on the table shift and move slightly, like waves on an ocean. And then it hits him. It hits him hard. Oh, yep. The aftertaste of the tea, why it was familiar. Why things are moving in inexplicable ways. Why everything is feeling more fucked up by the second. He's been here before. Moment seems to blank out of existence from Cameron's memory before the next thing knows. He's already standing up, the chair sliding back behind him. Yep. He was probably laced. He stares at Brian with wide eyes. His mouth is open, but he can't seem to say anything. He can't think of what to say or if the bear did what he thinks he did. Brian stares back, watching Cameron carefully in the way that tells the coyote the bear isn't surprised at all by this reaction. That makes Cameron even more afraid. The cozy, dreamy lighting of the trailer becomes more ominous, red and dangerous, and the bear in front of him seems to warp. Ah! Into a demon. No, 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 no. What did you give me? Cameron looks wildly at the coffee mug. You need to calm down, understand? What did you give me? I think you already know the answer to that, so why don't you sit down and get it together? The bear's face is so warped, but Cameron honestly can't tell if it's real or not. Was it psilocybin? Did you drug me with shrooms? Brian says nothing, and he's right that Cameron knows. He can never forget this feeling. Oh my god, why? It ruined my life! Cameron is heaving for breath, the sound of his gasping almost drowning the bear out. Sit down and I'll explain. But Cameron has no intention of sitting down. The sensations and visuals are just as bad as the last time, if not worse, and he's only at the beginning. The fear and panic reaching a dizzying level, and Cameron is running around the table for the door. Then he's on his back. His chest, spine, and the back of his head is aching. Brian is on top of him, and Cameron is on his back. He can see the coffee mug shattered on the ground a few feet away. Cameron struggles, wheezing for breath. Let me go! I can't breathe! Brian responds by squeezing his arms tighter, leaning more weight on Cameron's torso. Stop! I'm sorry, I'm sorry! He doesn't even know what he's apologizing for, just hoping that maybe it'll get the bear to stop. And I thought you were cute when you were smiling. That statement, for whatever reason, is the scariest part of what's happening right now. He starts to scream, but for the only person he can think of right now. Devin! Help me! Devin! Devin! Shut the fuck up. Brian sounds legitimately disgusted as he pulls himself off of Cameron. Coyote prepares to scream again, but sees Brian's foot lash out and kick him at his side, sending him against the base of the counter. Then leaning over him with both of his giant paws on the edge of the counter, he starts kicking Cameron over and over. Cameron yelps and wheezes. The blow is hard enough that he's worried that the bear is definitely going to break something if he hasn't already. This is why we do not like Brian, Batham. Are you happy now? They do not fuck around with the writing, I'm telling you, dude. He thrashes and rolls, trying to escape. The one kick catches him particularly hard at the base of his sternum, and he violently curls up like a loud frog-like croaky noise escaping his throat. Brian pauses as the sound continues emanating from Cameron's mouth. Cameron can hear the bear breathing heavily over him as Brian watches his agonized writhing, almost like he's fascinated by it. After nearly a minute, the terrible noises turn back to gasps, which then turn into sobs as Cameron stays curled up on his side, one arm around his midsection while the other is pressed over his eyes. Brian doesn't move, just watching as Cameron cries on the floor. At first, Cameron thinks it might be better just to keep his eyes closed and try to disappear into the darkness. Maybe wake up again, but at a new place this time. Dear Dyer, we are fucked. Exactly the reason why I'm terrified of this character, dude. Anywhere seems better than here. But that's when an odd, slightly curved, glowing red lines begin expanding and shrinking behind his eyeballs, and Cameron whines at the terrible reminder of what's going to happen. He's going to trip, and it's going to be terrible. Cameron pulls his paw away from his eyes and finds out that what he sees isn't much better. The huge bear is crouched in front of him, his fur now a writhing, pulsating, massive thing that almost seems like another living creature covering the bear. Listen! What you're gonna do next is gonna determine what's gonna happen to you. This is a dream. It has to be a dream. Everything that's happened, not just in this trailer, but in this whole town. It has to be a dream, a hallucination, a trick. This can't be happening. I need you to talk to some folks I used to know. If you're really one of those psychics, if you can fix my problems, I'll let you go like nothing happened. Wait, where is this? Cameron? Devin comes to again and he blurts out the name without thinking. He's not sure how long it's been since the last time he woke up. It feels like hours, possibly even days since he was last conscious. He'd been dreaming. Something about insects crawling and biting his arms. Tornadoes. A twisting force. He realizes then that his arms are what brought him back to the waking world. They'd fallen asleep, but now the tingling is so bad that it feels like they're covered in crawling, writhing ants made of molten lead. The bear grunts in discomfort and tries to bring them down from above his head, but he isn't able to. They come up short, and he hears a rattling sound close to his ears, which twitch at the loudness. Chains? Devin freezes, keeping his eyes closed, unsure if whoever did this to him is close by. Although it's hard to think through all the haziness, the memories come back to him rather quickly. First, he remembers walking deeper into the woods before the strange bear who went into his trailer to get something. He came out with a bottle of water, claiming it was for Cameron. Then after walking further into the dense forest, they came upon a white van. The exact kind of van that would make most people suspicious. Devin did become more suspicious, but by that time it was already too late. The old bear had pulled a gun on them, one that wasn't his shotgun, and told them to both get in the van. Artie started to run, and the other bear didn't hesitate to shoot him, aiming for his head! He did kill Artie! Holy shit! Oh my god, he did kill him! Devin isn't sure, but he could swear he saw a spray of something, whether it be fur, blood, or worse, fan out from the back of Artie's head before he dropped. Devin's fingers and toes clench inward as he thinks about that moment. The sound, the suddenness of it. But mostly he remembers the way Artie fell. It was instant, like strings that had held him up had been cut, crumpling so quickly that Devin is sure that he'd been killed. At that point, Devin did everything the old bear told him to do, including laying Cameron on the rough desert floor. They're separated so far away. No, dude. He's fucking dead. Artie is fucking dead, dude. There's no way. Devin tries to keep from whining as he wonders if that might be the last time he saw Cameron, and then laid him down in the van and letting him bind his arms up. He thought about fighting back in that moment, but it was so quick before we knew it, he was secured and he was made to drink from the bottle. Now he's in the very center of the tornado. A twisting force. Devin clenches his eyes shut even tighter, feeling the moisture gather at the corners. Around the point is equal to force times distance. But he opens them a moment later, realizing that his captor would have seen all the movements he made. Perpendicular to force. He's alone in the van. His eyes sting and the bear realizes that he's sweating heavily. This metallic box he's stuck in is hot, almost overwhelmingly stifling. He worries for a moment that he slept through the night, and now it's sunrise and he's about to cook to death in this van. But after gauging the light, he decides it's still around sunset, just a few hours after what had happened, after Artie had been killed. Shit. Devin squeezes his eyes shut again, feeling tears leak out into the moist fur on his cheeks. He allows himself in this moment, but quickly focuses again, knowing Cameron is still out there with that bear. That's enough to get a rise from Devin, one that builds into a wave into his chest. A combination of adrenaline and terror, but mostly fury. While the brutality of this backwoods bear evokes fear in Devin, it also makes him angry that someone, anyone would feel they would have the right to do what the old bear did. He opens his eyes again and takes in his surroundings. He's lying flat on his back. His arms are stretched above his head. He can feel that it's a pair of handcuffs that are holding him in place. There's enough to give that slowly that he's able to turn over onto his stomach. The action is incredibly painful, and Devin can't help but grunt loudly. His arms are feeling like they might have fallen off this as a spasm. Slowly, painfully, he picks himself up into a kneeling position, getting a better look at his predicament. He realizes that these handcuffs are more like shackles, meant to hold bear-sized creatures like himself in place. They bolted into the floor of the van. Devin glances up suddenly. His ears are catching what sounds like a faint cry outside the van. Cameron? Devin's voice comes out hoarse and cracked once more. Was that Cameron? It sounded like him. Devin is still groggy from whatever was in that bottle of water, but he's sure that he heard the distinct sound of his boyfriend's voice. The fact that it's now so suddenly absent convinces Devin that was definitely Cameron. He strains to listen for several more seconds but can't hear anything. He looks down at the heavy chain linking the metal cuffs around his wrists. They're unbreakable. Still, he finds himself foolishly yanking at the shackles, hoping there might be some kind of give in to the slightly rusted chain and bolts. Shit! Tears fills Devin's eyes, the feeling of falling and falling forever returning. He felt this way only a few times before. The first time being while he was running home and after he'd found Lupita's body. The last time being when he saw Arturo getting shot, and now knowing his boyfriend could be at the very mercy of the bear whose intentions Devin can't even begin to guess. He just knows that they're horrific, but seeing the faces of those people, it changes something in Devin. A cool, icy calm descends on him, and he looks at the chains carefully. His classes in physics have taught him all about the way in which force is exerted, and can seemingly accomplish things that seem impossible. So even while— oh, that's actually pretty smart! He's gonna use physics to try to break himself out. So even while his heart hammers in his ears, and even when his brain is clouded with the dense fog of sedation, Devin analyzes the chain and the bolts holding it in place. Torque. That's actually pretty smart if that's the case. Oh god, we're on the trip. Cameron stays curled up on the floor for what feels like a long time. He had ultimately decided that he'd rather watch the harmless, pulsating arches dance behind his eyelids. There we go with the arches again, dude. Rather than the nightmare the trailer is becoming. Every minute or so, the reality of the situation hits the coyote, and a burst of whimpering gasps escape his muzzle for a few times before fading back to only whimpering. He would stay down until his trip was over, but Brian ended up pulling him back to where he was sitting. At this point, the coyote doesn't fight the bear, going limp while his body's pulled along. For a minute, Brian tries to get him to sit on the chair, but eventually just gives up, dropping Cameron next to the table where he just lies on the floor. The coyote listens to the old bear moving around the trailer, though it's barely audible over his own gasping sobs. Eventually, those lumbering, shuffling footsteps come closer, and Cameron knows that the old bear is crouching next to him, though the coyote still doesn't open his eyes. Listen, kid, since you ain't gonna calm down, you're taking some Xans, got it? Cameron listens but doesn't move, afraid to do anything. Then he flinches as a rough, callous paw grabs up on his chin, forcing his mouth to open slightly. Oh god, are we gonna— Finally, Cameron opens his eyes a bit and almost gasps at the vivid red lighting, which keeps him distracted until something falls into his mouth. A pill. Cameron recognizes its distinct bar-shaped and bitter taste. Brian holds out a cup, a plastic one that Cameron looks at it with undisguised fear. It's just water. The old bear gestures at the counter where the gallon jug sits. While Cameron still doesn't move, Brian sighs. Then he gets up, grabs the cup straight out of the sink, and pours it half full before drinking it. Cameron's mouth is as dry as the desert surrounding them, likely due to the combination of drugs and fear, and he really does want to swallow the pill to get rid of the taste. So he takes the cup and drinks, swallowing the Xanax, and despite his fear, he drinks the cup until the cup is empty. He vaguely remembers his high school friends telling him to drink water to make his trip less intense. Cameron has the feeling that it probably won't change anything. Brian takes the cup from the coyote's limp paw and takes Cameron a second to realize the bear is holding out another pill that looks like a small red square. Now put this one under your tongue. Cameron stares, trying to figure out if it's just a trip making it look that color or— Brian sighs again, becoming more impatient. I broke a third off the bar I gave you. But now Cameron is unsure that the pill is actually red and he draws back. A counterfeit pill, and that probably means it's cut with something. Something like opioids. I don't... Yep, slap to the face. Brian slaps him, the strike coming in so fast that the coyote isn't even sure what happened. The sudden numbing sting on the left side of his face, along with the bright flash of light, is very familiar though, and Cameron feels as though he traveled 7 years back in time. His delayed reaction is a surprised gasp as he raises his arms over his face. The bear yanks his arms back down and thrusts the pill at his muzzle. This time the coyote opens his mouth willingly, maneuvering the pill to sit under his tongue. His movements feel almost robotic at this point. To Cameron's immense relief, this seems to satisfy the bear, and Brian gets up from his crouching position, backing away. The coyote sits there a moment, then slowly drags himself under the table, huddling in a corner as tears wells up in his eyes again. After going through all that, and knowing that there's plenty more to go through, Cameron longs for Devon more than he ever has before. He waits until the pill dissolves before asking the question that he dreads hearing the answer to. Maybe it's either opioids or acid. Is Devon the bear, is he still alive? If this giant and violent bear had encountered Devon and Artie, there's no telling what he might have done to them. His heart drops as the bear seems to hesitate. Please, just tell me the truth. Cameron needs to know. The bear's fine. He's locked up, but he's fine. His tone sounds genuine, and even though Cameron will never trust him, he has to hold on to some hope. And if I do this for you, you'll let him go too? That's the plan. He your boyfriend? Cameron isn't sure how to respond to that, so he doesn't. Brian shrugs. It doesn't matter much to me. Just do what I tell you and you'll both be out of here by tomorrow. It's quiet for a moment and Brian moves to the other end of the trailer, opening the fridge and doing whatever it is he does. Cameron doesn't bother keeping track. Let me know when you start seeing shit. Got something to do real quick. Cameron blurts out the other question weighing heavy on his mind. And Arturo, the cat, is he... Brian doesn't look back and just sighs again. Cameron doesn't ask any follow-up questions, feeling like he's got his answer. A thought that Artie might be gone is too messed up for his drugged-up mind, especially because he feels certain that he can't be gone. It's probably acid. Acid was one of the things where he said that I think he was okay with, but he still saw things. Cameron can't explain why, but he just feels it. He feels Dev, and he feels Artie. Brian stands next to the door holding a plastic water bottle. Gonna go out for about 5 minutes. I'll be right next to the trailer, so if I see you try anything, I'll shoot your boyfriend in front of you, then I'll kill you. Eventually. Cameron doesn't move, but soon the trip intensifies and he hugs himself, the movement making his ribs ache from the earlier kicks. Oh, yeah, then that's why... Yeah. Okay, so he gave him acid for sure then. Because he said it was like a square red pill. Yeah, that's 100% fucking acid. He watches the vivid colors and shapes of his hallucinations. Meanwhile, the acrid taste of Xanax lingers on his tongue. He hadn't felt any pain. He doesn't feel any pain right now either. Not physically, at least. It's something deeper. It's about who he used to be, who he is now, and who he's about to become. Something profoundly terrible has happened, and it's changed everything. He knows that much at least. What he really wishes to know right now is who the hell he even is. He tries to think back on what he last remembers. Standing in front of everyone in the second grade, his trembling paws holding his book report. He clears his throat, trying to figure out how to put his sentences together in advance. Speak up, Arturo. The whole class needs to hear you. Arturo. That's his name. Arturo Herrera. He opens his eyes. Wait. Is he actually still alive? But how did he end up here? Where are his classmates? Second grade or was it third? No, he's positive he's at least in high school. He tries again to remember what happened last. He was sitting in the junior parking lot with his girlfriend. She was upset because another girl at school was being mean to her. She's a Jaguar sitting in the passenger seat of his beat-up sedan, one of her feet up on the dash, and he's leaning towards her to kiss her on the cheek. What's her name? Sarah Mendoza. Or was it Montoya? But now he remembers that they didn't last long at all. Maybe only a semester, probably because he sucks at comforting people. Probably, but like, they said that like he was hit in the head. Or he was shot in the head. God, this is so crazy. He does always say the wrong thing at the wrong time, but he still had several girlfriends after her up until Mar Maria? He is still alive! How? Wait, then where did he get shot then? His voice is so alien, so strange, and it startles him a bit. What's even more strange is how hard it is to even say her name. A skull graze can knock you out, but that is super slim. Maybe, huh? He stutters and he has to chew around the syllables like he's biting at the letters. As he does, he notices a sour taste in his mouth and he can smell vomit. Looking at the forest floor in front of his face, and he sees a dried mess of what he's sure is the source of the smell. Bits of something orange and mushy, and chunks of what he recognizes as jerky. Things are starting to come together, but it takes a long time. Maybe even an hour as he goes in and out of consciousness. Maria, Pueblo, Devon, psychology, graduation, behavioral tech, road trip, accident, and echo. Cameron, THC cartridge, visions, ghost, panic, Baron, a gunshot. A gunshot. He'd been shot. It's only now that he realizes his current position. Curled up on his side, arms folded up in front of his chest. He tries to move his arms, but like everything else he's trying to do, it's very difficult. It wasn't a shotgun. They said it was a different kind of gun. So who knows? His muscles feel unnervingly weak, and every time he moves, it comes with an uncontrollable twitching and trembling. Arturo stares at his paws, watching the tremors, trying to quell the panic. Finally, he slowly manages to sit up. Immediately, dizziness overtakes him, and he has to pause for several seconds before he's sure that he's not going to fall back down. Once he's sitting up, his stomach turns and he dry heaves, and that's when he feels the pain. It's not terrible, but the deep cold throb at the back of his head feels remarkably wrong. With a shaking paw, he reaches back and he finally feels the damage. The fur is crusted and matted, becoming a bit damp as he gets closer to the source. His finger brushes over a slight gap and there's a small crater in his fur. As he presses down, he realizes the crater goes past the fur and past the skin. Then he feels something oddly hard and almost sharp. Arturo gasps, realizing the stiff, jagged thing he's running to a finger over is his broken skull. He jerks his paw away, breathing hard. He was shot in the head. In the head! He remembers deciding to run since the shotgun wasn't loaded, but the bear had taken out another gun, a handgun, and then... How is he alive? How long will he stay alive? Is there a bullet in his brain right now? He knows he needs something, so he tries to ask for it. I need shelf melt. Dude, he got some brain damage, dude. 100%. He respawned. That's so horrible. That is so horrible. He struggles not to stutter to say the right word that he knows he's trying to use. This is bad. Devon was hurt too, maybe even killed. And Cameron, he was already hurt, and it was a monster in this forest that hurt him. The cat brings his knees up to his chest, putting his arms around them like he was a child. He feels like a child, helpless and completely confused as he sits injured in this terrible forest. Like, it makes me hate Brian even more because I knew from the second that they saw this fucker, they were going to get killed or hurt. This must be some kind of awful dream and he wants to wake up, but even though everything feels unfamiliar, surreal, and dreamlike, he knows this is real. Arturo feels his face crumple as he starts to cry, pushing in his forehead against his knees. I need something. No, the wrong words. I need someone. There's some relief as Arturo feels like he's improving at least a little bit. Maybe this is only temporary. He's been told several times that in his psych and neuroscience course that the brain is plastic. The fact that he's recalling these memories, making sense of these memories, gives him hope, but there's still certain things, very simple things, that are missing. Ruined my life. Arturo jerks his head to look up, heaving again as another wave of dizziness and nausea sweeps out through him. Cameron? Oh, we get to see the trailer for the first time. He looks in the direction of the sound and sees a trailer, partially hidden behind tree trunks and bushes about 30 feet away. His right ear pops loudly several times and he rubs it, feeling the fluid come out. He knows it's blood. The cat slowly begins to stand up and immediately gets a terrible shock as he realizes the weakness he felt in his arms is also in his legs. He struggles and stumbles his way to the tree, trying not to panic again before finally leaning up against it. Dude, this guy is the fucking MVP. Look at that! Holy shit! Me go! I can't breathe! Arturo realizes he's not the only one in this nightmare. Did the monster come back for Cam? I'm sorry, I'm sorry! This is when he was getting kicked! Arturo starts moving toward the trailer before it dawns on him his shattered, bewildered mind that he's looking at the bear's trailer. The one that shot him and must have Cameron in there. Devin! Help me! Devin! Devin! Arturo flinches back at the sound, and his fur bristles along with his spine. His eyes are wide as Cameron screaming and echoes through the forest. The cat looks back desperately, hoping that Devin does come to help. Even though that evil bear is bigger, Devin's a pretty big bear too, and he would stand a much better chance than himself that he would. Thuds followed by yelps and howls come next, and finally it's too much for Arturo. Dev, you're Cameron. He can't go in there like this, and he knows that, but he can get help. Maybe. Depending on how bad it is, these problems he's having could just get a lot worse over the course of just a few hours. But he has no choice. While he knows he has a car, he also knows that he can't use it, even though he can't remember why. He remembers there's a highway, the one that they should have gone the second they got here. He needs to get them all help. So with one more terrified look at that trailer, he starts to make his way out of the forest. At first, Arturo is filled with a sense of hopelessness as he finds out just how hard it is to walk, with his right side being almost limp. It feels like half of his muscles have just wasted away, but after some kind of trial and error, he finds himself that if he widens his stance a bit, and swings his arms in a way that looks a bit lopsided, he's able to keep his balance. So the bullet likely passed through the speech part of his brain. Yeah, probably. Because, like, he can't speak properly and he can't really walk normally either. His pace is reasonable as well too, so swallowing down his panic again, he makes his way up back onto the dirt road. Dude, Arturo's the real fucking MVP right now, dude. Like, shot, injured, probably most than anybody else in the story, and brain damage. Arturo's being the MVP right now. I'm telling you, dude, furries know how to make a fucking game, and they have amazing dialogue skills. Even though the disbelief of his situation, even though he's terrified for Cameron and Devin, he feels something deep down that's worse. He tries to ignore it, but it gnaws at the back of his brain. He's dying. And he can feel it. Oh my god, no! So he is dead! Because he's probably bleeding out. Devin struggles with the handcuffs, trying to get the chain into the position that he wants. He pulls his paws up until the chain is taut, then moves slowly in a circle around the bolt until the chain twists on itself. That was the easy part, and based on the tension that he felt being put on the chain links, he had been feeling pretty confident. But then he spent what feels like the last hour trying to actually pull enough force and weight into the motions that the chain would actually break. While the twisted chain is taking most of the pressure off his own wrists, it still hurts. Devin can see through the fur that he's already starting to bleed from his wrists, and the fur is coming off in small tufts which each failed twist and jerk. Come on, damn it, please! After another failed heave, Devin slumps with his paws pressed to the floor of the van, gasping and sweating. A wave of dizziness comes over him and he ends up pressing his face to the metal floor. Please, please help me. Devin's half-heartedly prays, just in case if there's something above all of this. There's footsteps. Devin scrambles to twist back around and step over the anchoring bolt so his paws are behind him again, sitting up to face the back door of the van. It opens and Devin finds himself staring at the bear that did this to him. Even though he doesn't want Cameron anywhere near this van, seeing that the coyote isn't there with Brian sends panic through the younger bear. What do you want? Where's Cameron? Please! Shut it. Devin watches with dread as he sees the huge bear holding that water bottle. Please, just tell me what you want. I'll give it to you. Just let me see him. His teeth snap together. The next thing the bear knows is that his head is resting against a metal cage partition that separates the back of the van from the seats. Dazed, his chin is on his chest. His arms are under his back, forcing him to arch his chest and stomach towards the van's roof. Then Brian is on him, pressing the bottle to his lips. Dazed from the punch, Devon can only mumble in protest. No, no. Devon sees the look in the other bear's eyes, and he knows that he's eventually going to have to drink from the bottle again. Feeling completely defeated, Devon continues to plead with the man. Wait, just wait, please. Tell me what you want. Is he okay? Boy, you're really starting to piss me off. Are you gonna do what the fuck I tell you? Brian grabs Devon's chest for him in both paws and hauls him up so he's sitting in a more upright position. I'm gonna take it on you, little cocksuck yo. You understand me? Now shut up! But Devon can't shut up. He's half convinced that Cameron is already dead. Please, just let me see him so I know he's okay. Alright, I was gonna say you already earned him one good hit. Now it's two. Want a third? Devon just stares. Of course, he knows that Brian doesn't need an excuse. That if he really wants to hurt Cameron, he can. That there's nothing Devon can do. He can only do what the older bear tells him to do, so he opens his muzzle. Slowly, Brian puts the slightly bitter water into his mouth and Devon drinks. That water is laced! Every single drink that he's giving these guys are laced. Even though his body wants to keep drinking, Devon starts to pull back and only after a few swallows, as if he's had enough and doesn't even suspect the water is drugged. But Brian pushes the bottle hard enough that Devon's lips are painfully mashed between the plastic and his own teeth, and he's forced to keep drinking. Even when he lets out a tiny dribble out of the corner of his mouth, Brian growls more threats at him. Eventually the water is gone, and Devon hangs his head in defeat as Brian pulls back, backing out of the van. Devon squeezes his eyes shut, wishing this fucking bear would just tell him what's happening, what he's doing to Cameron, why he's keeping him alive. But the younger bear is too afraid to talk, too afraid of what Brian might do, and without another word the van door slams shut. Up, and here we go. Now this is making me scared to drink water. Because I literally have like this last bottle of water on me. I'm scared to drink that now. Cameron stays under the table, the Xanax having kicked in fully by this point, leaving the coyote in a bit quiet and stoic haze. His sobbing is trailed off, not much emotion left in him, just feeling numb. His tripping is getting more and more intense, and he knows that the peak is nearing, maybe in another half an hour. Still, he begins to notice things that he sure aren't part of his trip. A presence not too far away, one that he knows very well. Dev. With no idea what he's doing, he instinctively reaches out towards that warm energy, but then he's interrupted by a closer presence he doesn't recognize, one that's much closer. Cameron gets on his paws and knees, looking out from under the table. What is that? This vision is definitely different than anything he's experienced before. Unlike the dreamlike, reality-altering psilocybin, the vision that he's entered has a clarity to it, like he's not even tripping at all. The figure is someone appears before him, and Cameron knows everything immediately. Oh, what is that? Benjamin Kowalski, a rabbit born in 1977, ran away from this Pueblo home when he was 16. For several years, he moved from city to city, sometimes neighboring states, before settling in Payton. He stocked shelves at a grocery store, and the extra money he saved up would fund his weed supply. Brian was his dealer! In September 1998, he agreed to let Brian take him to his trailer home in Echo. He promised 2 ounces of weed in exchange for one night of lovemaking, as the bear had put it. Benjamin wasn't gay, and even if he was pretty sure Brian wouldn't be his type. 2 ounces was a lot, though. Way too good to pass up. After 4 days of torture, Brian accidentally strangled him for too long, and Benjamin didn't regain consciousness. Of course, Brian planned on killing him anyway, so he did. The bear was only disappointed that he didn't get a few more days with them. Yeah, these are probably the spirits of Brian's victims here. Yeah, that's it! Timothy Esposito was a skunk born in 1985 in the Midwest. His hometown was large, industrial city, one that he'd been in decay for his entire life. So he transplanted to Mesa, and in May 2005, that's where he attended a BDSM-themed event in an unusual warehouse. He liked breathplay and so did Brian, so they fooled around a bit. He didn't much like Brian, but the bear liked him a lot. Brian liked him so much, in fact, that he followed the skunk as he walked home after the event and kidnapped him on an empty street. Timothy was strong and almost escaped multiple times, once managing to leave the trailer before being caught just a few dozen feet from the dirt road. Brian continued their breath play, except now it wasn't play at all. After 2 weeks, Brian again suffocated his victim for too long. This time, Brian thought he was fairly successful in keeping his victim alive that long. Let's see, who is this now? Daniel Gallegos was a ferry boy in 1966. He was from the Saronian capital, but was staying with the family in Mill City to work a summer job. He was saving up for money for his university tuition. In August 2014, days before he was supposed to head back to Sonora, he met Brian outside a club before being kidnapped and driven to Echo. Brian was able to keep him for an entire month. Even though a few of Brian's customers had seen him tied to a torture rack, no one said a thing. Eventually, Brian seemed to decide he'd gotten all he could out of this ferret, and he bludgeoned. I don't know how to say that. And he bludgeoned Daniel to death with an old tire iron, just because he wanted to try something different. The bear couldn't believe how long it took, how hard he had to hit the kid before he finally stopped moving. Cameron! Cameron is jolted back to reality as he's yanked up by his shirt so he's not even touching the floor. God, dude, this guy's so fucking scary, dude. Brian's paws hold the front of his shirt while shaking him violently. What? What is it? Cameron kicks around to try and get his feet on solid ground again. Despite being almost overwhelmed by the numbing calm of Xanax, it's not enough to stop the primal fear that Cameron has of this bear. Especially not after seeing the horrors that he committed on those men. What he'd just seen was condensed and distilled into an easy-to-follow series of events, but all the while he'd been absorbed into all the tiny details too. He knows Brian promised these men many things, that he'd only keep them for 1, 2, 3 more days before letting them go. That if they'd just be a little more quiet, he'd let them go. But Cameron knows none of those promises were kept. The visions had been so real to Cameron that it felt like he'd been there for everything they went through. Luckily, he hadn't felt anything, but it was as if he was in the room with them. This room. Brian seems to gain some control over himself and lets go of the coyote. Cameron isn't able to stand with his weak, shaking legs and sits down heavily on the ground, looking up at the looming bear. Kept calling your name and you wouldn't answer. I told you to let me know if the visions were starting. I couldn't. Brian waits, looking more impatient the more Cameron stutters, which only makes him stammer more. I swear to fucking God, why do all of you become whimpering little dipshits the second I lose my cool for like a second? He reaches down and Cameron cringes as he yanked up to his feet again. It's clear that Brian wants to keep standing this time, so he does, steadying himself against the table behind him. Quit that crying. He does his best to stop, but the sobs keep coming. Brian, the visions, the people he just felt. It's not an easy thing to just shrug off. I said to quit, not be quieter. Cameron's mouth dries up even more. His tongue is now sandpapered against the roof of his mouth as fear helps shock him into a statue-like state. Cameron knows he owes a lot to the sedative right now. Without it, he wouldn't be able to stop, and Brian might kill him. That's better, but faster next time, got it? Okay. Cameron opens his mouth to answer, but finds himself yanked forward suddenly, only to come to a horrible jarring stop as the bear slams his knee into the coyote's torso. Cameron watches the luminous arches writhe about, convulsing, almost like they're mirroring the coyote's inner turmoil. The knee is so big compared to himself that it seems to cover most of his chest and his stomach. You could thank your boyfriend for that one, and he still earned you one more. Brian finally pulls back, and Cameron crumples to the ground, unable to process what Brian is saying, not that he'd be able to understand it anyway. The coyote lets out guttural groans over and over again. What's that you're saying? Brian taunts him from above, and Cameron responds with a whooping gasp, pressing his face into the floor in agony. I asked you a fucking question! Cameron is lifted into the air again, feeling his feet kick around for a purchase on the ground as he once again dangles from his shirt, the fabric stretching to the point that Cameron can hear the threads popping in his collar. Oh my god, dude, that sprite is so fucking scary. Cameron cracks open an eye and sees Brian drawing back a huge paw, and Cameron manages to choke out a few words with the tiny amount of air that he's gathered into his collapsed lungs. No, nothing. Cameron wheezes loudly between the words, knowing that this is exactly what Brian likes, but can he stop himself? He's not even sure if stopping himself will help. Maybe that will only trigger Brian into hurting him more. But to Cameron's relief, the bear pauses and slowly drops his fists. Cameron sees the wild look in Brian's eyes gradually leave as he stares at the gasping coyote in his grasp. Good. Guess I'll save the other for later then. The bear lets go, and Cameron slumps back into his knees, curling up again into the fetal position. Now, what was it that you saw? He didn't feel any pain, but now he does. Speak up, Arturo. The whole class needs to hear you. Oh god, so we're playing through like all three of their perspectives now. Like that's something that they did in Flynn's route and Echo, but like now that we're oh my god, that is actually so cool. He's in front of 20 curious, attentive eyes while his paws shake, almost making his papers rattle. He had less than a year to learn a new language, and now they expect him to give an entire book report. To give anything to be in his room, gaming on his brand new PlayStation 2, but at first he has to figure out how to survive these next 5 minutes. He's playing his PlayStation 4 in his dorm room when Maria walks in. Hey, beautiful. You able to get some sleep? He doesn't look up from his game. Oh, you know my overflow toe. That makes him look up. Huh? She looks confused, frustrated. Born and sworn and mourn and forlorn? He puts down the controller and stands up. Baby, what? Arturo installs a lock on the medicine cabinet. He helps her eat healthy. He helps her make sure she goes to bed at the right time. Whenever she feels a mood swing approaching, high or low, they prepare together. Maria once cried and told him that she wasn't worth it, that he should find someone that isn't an unpredictable mess. He told her that she was definitely worth it and they just need to be prepared. Oh my god, and he's curled into an arch, dude. Arturo opens his eyes and cringes at the ache in his head. Not an ache, but an explosion ripping through his skull, his brains, and down his spine. It hurts so much that he lets out a sound that a half moan, half scream. This time it seems to take even longer for him to understand where and when he is. He'd been moving as fast as he could without actually running or jogging since he isn't even capable of doing that. He guessed he had probably made it 2 miles away from Echo, so 5 more to go. He'd just been thinking about how he's walking almost exactly like his grandfather did after his stroke. And Arturo had thought, now we'll actually have something to bond over before it happened. A dizzy spell, unlike all the others, made him stumble, like he was looking over the edge of a cliff. An anxiety that he'd never known before overcame him, making his heart beat so fast that Arturo was convinced it was going to explode. He got on his knees and started praying for help, and then... Now he's here on the ground, his nose and forehead stinging from where it slammed into the asphalt, and the rest of his body just ached. His aches. He'd had a seizure, and even though he's never had one before, he knows what happened. At least he was on his knees, so his face didn't have far to fall. Still, he's left feeling so exhausted, so defeated that he just wants to lay there. He'd been in a half-dream state, completely confused as he stared around him, memories flicking through his mind like a viewmaster. An hour had passed, maybe two, before he finally understood what his situation was again. He almost wants to go back to that confused state, pretend it's a dream. But now he's crying because how is he going to take care of Maria if he can barely walk? Barely talk? She's good at taking care of herself, but he needs to be there just in case. He needs to live, and he needs to get better. And while he's glad to be out of Echo, he knows Cameron is still there, and if Devon is gone too, he knows the bear would only want him to save Cameron. Get up, Arturo. All your friends need you. Eventually, he slowly sits up. His paws are shaking so badly. He's worried that he's having another seizure, but eventually he steadies himself. He needs to keep moving. So with a deep shuddering breath, Arturo starts to carefully get up, and that's when he sees it. Oh my god. Oh my god, it's the thing. It stares and Arturo just stares back silently. In that moment, he's sure that he actually did die, that what he actually assumed was a seizure and it was really just the end. And now this thing, this embodiment of death is here to take him. Instead of moving toward him though, or really acknowledging him in any way, he doesn't move at all. Arturo notices something out of the corner of his eye, and though it's distant, he sees lights. Headlights. Multiple headlights moving in both directions in the landscape. It's the highway. I mean, it sorta kinda helped us in the last story, but holy shit, I did not expect to see that back. Arturo looks back, but it's gone. With nothing else to do, he starts to get up. He's sure that he didn't see those lights before he collapsed, but a lot of memory is missing. Several patches between where he was shot and now are unaccounted for. What he saw was probably just a product of his failing brain. So wordlessly, he walks into his wide stance with his arms swinging awkwardly, knowing that nothing will be the same again. Oh my god, dude, I did not expect to see the whole outlet fucking monster thing come back. After telling Brian everything that he can remember, the bear seems satisfied. Did you try and talk to him? No, I didn't have time. Brian waves away at the coyote's excuse. Just do it next time, I won't interrupt you. Cameron wants to tell the bear that he's not even sure he can talk to them, because after all this time he's starting to think that he shouldn't be able to. He can see what's happened in the past, maybe even what might happen in the future, but that's it. He only sees a record, but if they acknowledge him, communicate with them, and that's something that he doesn't want anything to do with. Devin had said that they don't believe in demons, but that's what Cameron thinks they are. All of these unpredictable forces that haunt and torment the living. It's all demons. Brian disappears again, and because he doesn't grab the coyote, Cameron assumes he isn't meant to follow him. A minute or two later, Cameron hears a loud snoring sound and he flinches. Then it happens again, and Cameron looks over to see Brian leaning over the counter, head low. Combined with the sound and posture, the coyote knows that the bear is definitely snorting something. He'd been in a similar position many times in the past. Either way, he's not about to ask the bear when he's snorting. He can only hope that it's something that knocks Brian out, or at least slows him down. After sniffing and dabbling at his nostrils, the bear returns to Cameron's side. Well, let's go outside to a spot that I think you'll get better reception or whatever. Before Cameron can fully comprehend what Brian just said, he finds himself being forced over the huge bear's shoulder before being lifted in a fireman's carry. Cameron closes his eyes, clutching into the fur of Brian's back as the bear lumbers heavily around, listening to the sounds of a screen door swinging open then shut. He can sense they're outside, the air warm from the lingering heat of the day. Then he finds his feet coming into contact with the ground. He might have lost his memory, but it's still him under. Wait, so is Flynn canonically dead then? And that's him? Actually, what is the canon ending to Echo then? Because I remember at the end of TJ and Flynn's route, they both had the ending where Cameron saw the whole monster for the first time, except it was like Flynn. But like his snout was removed and his eyes were hollow. I don't know. But then at the end of Flynn's route, we also see him as the monster that Jenna saw as a kid. Like, I don't know. What is the canon story here? There is no canon ending. Okay, so God, this is insane. Cameron looks at his surroundings while Brian ambles around 5 feet away, kicking at the dirt and foliage. It's twilight now, at least as far as Cameron can tell. The eerie, ominous red hasn't gone away yet, even though they're well past sunset. The first time he tried shrooms, colors did change, but in the sense that they become more vibrant and saturated. The forest just looks like it did when he had the vision about the static entity. He was with Dev then. How is this even happening? Who's having these thoughts? Devon? What? Cameron jolts back to the present, even though it's not the present, because time has stopped existing, and this is just a moment in this never-ending series of moments. Is time happening all at once? Brian is looking at him with a piercing gaze, and his fur is once again writhing out in his body as if it's come to life. Sorry, I'm just having a hard time concentrating. He lost himself in for a moment and just blurted out the first name that came to his mind to center himself and confirm that he still exists. The trip is reaching the same levels he experienced in high school that sent him running through an unfamiliar public park, his friends having to chase and pin him down. Ha! A fucking bet. I bet they didn't even measure what I gave you, because I thought you'd only take one swallow. It's a fuck ton, though. Oh, there's nothing he can add to that. It's scary, but the way that Brian is acting, that's really scaring him. Whatever he took is very obviously kicking in, and it's definitely not calming him down. Something wrong? Brian's tone is taunting and cruel, and to Cameron's horror, Brian comes closer right next to the coyote. No, I'm just feeling off because of the shrooms. Oh shit, you're like 3 milligrams of Xannies too. I totally forgot. Fuck, you better not fall asleep or go delirious on me, understand? Because if you do, I'll probably just kill you. Cameron stays still. He's reached a stage where he feels solidly stuck in a deep dream, one that he'll be in for several more hours. Who's dreaming? Hey, what's the matter? Am I making you feel uncomfortable? Is there something wrong with me? Cameron shakes his head with his tiny jerks, barely moving it. I asked a fucking question! I'm noticing you're on something, that's all. Well, no shit, kid. You think I was blowing my nose in there or something? Well, I was just thinking maybe we were going to see things together and you took a downer, but it looks like you're on an upper. Why would I want to see that shit when I got you? I don't like the ones out here, that's why I took it. Want to guess what I'm on? Cameron doesn't, but now he knows that cowering isn't going to help him. He plays along. Maybe cocaine? Adderall? You fucking kidding me, kid? Adderall? Do I look like a college brat trying to pull an all-nighter? Shit's like a cup of coffee to me. Cameron doesn't say anything, but Brian keeps quiet like he's waiting for the next guess. Meth? Too expensive, but close enough. It's mephedrone. Oh, okay, sorry, I never really did stims. Not after what happened to his mother. Bath salts. Oh, no. And it feels fucking amazing! What follows is the sight of a 500-pound bear awkwardly dancing and swinging his massive arms around violently, growling and laughing. It's terrifying. As the crazed bear is shadowboxing about 20 feet away, Cameron realizes that he might be able to run. Cocaine Bear, they got the idea from... Wow. Ha 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 ha. Oh, that's funny, dude. With his weak muscles from the sedative and his mindset absolutely fucked from the hallucinogen, he might not be able to outrun Brian. He's starting to forget that he even exists. Still, he might be able to hide. The desert is full of cracks and crevices that might be able to squeeze into wait out. Brian is there heaving for breath. Oh, fuck. I gotta relax. It's been a while, so I'm getting a huge rush. Gotta remember. Whew, I ain't as young as I used to be. Please, please let your heart give out. Please just die and let this nightmare, this decades-long nightmare you've created, end. Way too much. Anyway, it's making me forget what we're even doing. Remind me again, little buddy. Brian smiles at the young coyote, and Cameron takes it as his cue to smile back. If Cameron is remembering correctly, stimulants make people more empathetic, and he hopes he can tap into that. I'm gonna help you calm down some spirits. Cameron wants to say, and then you'll let me go, but Brian doesn't keep promises, and bringing it up might only trigger him to do more terrible things. That and now that they're outside, Cameron is sure he can feel Devon's presence, alive but hurt, and the coyote's desperately trying to figure out what to do next. Brian seems to know exactly what's on Cameron's mind. What about your bear? Maybe I was getting the wrong vibes, but I thought he's your boyfriend. Oh, of course, that's why I'm doing this. Oh fuck, I forgot to tell you he overheated in the van. Got distracted with you and left him in there for too long. A few seconds pass, during which Cameron's mind is telling him 10 different ways to react. Cameron knows for a fact that Devon's alive, but should he act terrified to satisfy the bear? Brian interrupts with a giggle. Nah, he's fine. Just wanted to make sure the feelings between the two of you are mutual. Your face said it all. Brian laughs again and even lets out a high-pitched whoop that echoes around the quiet forest. Not knowing what else to do, Cameron does his best to go along with Brian's game and forces a laugh. Ha 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 ha! Holy shit, you really got me there. I thought my heart was about to give out. Damn, you're cute. Cutest little yo I've ever seen. Oh, thanks, but you know drugs. They make everything seem better. I think I'm more on the ugly side of things, if I'm being honest. I mean, I haven't showered in a while either. Cameron pretends to self-consciously smooth over his head fur. Nah, you were cute before I amped up. Also, I've had guys shit themselves, either because they were scared or they thought it would stop me from doing what I did. It didn't, because this shit I'm on makes me horny as oh, so don't... So not only do you look cute, it's cute thinking that it might help you. Of course. Cameron saw the torture Brian inflicted, and the bear had to be drugged up whenever he was doing it. Cameron can especially remember Daniel's experience and his thoughts. 10, 15, sometimes even 24 hours of non-stop physical and mental torture, and it would go on and on and on and wouldn't stop until the bear's exhausted body would pass out. Then he would sleep for an entire day, sometimes longer than the process would begin again. But luckily for you, we got more important things to do. Come stand here next to me. Okay, I'm gonna help you. Cameron tries to make it sound like he's on the bear's side. Who's thinking these thoughts? But as Cameron moves to stand beside Brian, it finally seems to sink in that Brian is going to kill them. Not because it's obvious, but because he's starting to pick up on the bear's thoughts. He's reading his mind. He thinks he murdered Artie, but he didn't. For whatever reason, it's either because he's outside or because he's spacing out even more. He's certain of that. He'd never been close friends with the cat, but Cameron had gotten to know him, and that feeling, that amalgamation of a person that's Artie, is still out there. Cameron mentally reaches out to the cat, but it's so far, so distant, something is wrong with Artie. His amalgamation is missing some parts. Devon is still full and nearby, and it shines like a beacon in the darkness of the barren desert. So while Brian is telling him to contact people he murdered and buried under the ground, Cameron instead reaches out for Devon. A few minutes earlier, after Brian left, Devon became frantic. Even though he knows it won't help, it only make things worse. The instinctual part of his brain overwhelms everything. With low, bearish grunts and growls, he yanks and pulls and lunges with all of his weight, just trying to get something other than his own wrists to break. He'd already contemplated dislocating or even breaking his thumbs to pull his claws out of the cuffs, like he's seen the characters do in some movies. But just by looking at the metal, he can tell that they're too well fitted for that to do any good. He can gnaw his thumbs off, and they'd still be stuck. So he just yanks until blood is seeping into his paw fur, and even with that added lubrication, they don't budge. Please, please, please. That's the only word he says with each grunt of exertion. Finally, as the drugged water begins to take its effect, Dev slumps into his side, crying. He sobs harder than he ever has in his adult life. Cameron, I'm so sorry, Cameron. Please. He killed them, all because he needed to find out. Turns out he will find out, because they're going to die. How could he do this to Cameron? How could he be so stupid, so naive, inconsiderate, and selfish? In a flash of rage and desperation, Devon viciously gnaws at his right forearm, snarling. Again, he knows it's senseless, pointless, detrimental, but the self-loathing is all-consuming, and mostly he just wants to punish himself. After several seconds he stops. After blinking away the blur of his tears, he sees that while some fur is missing, he barely broke the skin. Devon lets out a hopeless, despairing laugh, even while tears stream down his face. The metal enclosure makes the laugh sound loud and hollow, and that's when Devon stops as he realizes how unhinged he sounds, how he shouldn't be acting like this. He doesn't have a right to break down. His friend is dead, and his best friend. Devon knows he needs to do everything he can to get out. The next time Brian is within reach, he's going to do everything he can to make sure he dies. He'll rip his throat out. But while that fire is rekindled into his chest, he can't fight whatever the drug the bear gave him. Devon suspects that it's making him a bit delirious too. Either way, it's powerful, and Devon knows that he probably won't be able to do much for another hour or so. So he lays down, trying to keep his ears open so he can be ready for the old bear if he comes back. If Cameron dies, it doesn't matter if I escape. I won't be able to live with that. Maddie! Maddie! Mateo! Huh? No one's used his second name since... Whoa! Why couldn't you just watch her? Oh, and now he's starting to see shit. Devon! Devon stays curled up because he knows he's imagined that, or his brain is playing tricks on him, or... Devon, it's me. I'm here. Cam? Devon stares at the swirling patterns and lines. Are you okay? No, none of us are okay. You're not okay. I don't even know if you're alive. Devon tries to move towards Cameron, but he stays up at a constant 10 feet away, no matter how hard the bear tries to get him. Devon, I am real. Cameron carefully enunciates each of these words. I'm doing this through, my mind, I think? I'm fucking psychic, remember? Well, now I know this is my bullshit. This is what got us into this nightmare in the first place. Devon, yeah, you know what? Fuck you. Fuck you. You're exactly what I was hoping you'd be. You don't exist. My sick, fucked up mind is making up this version of you that I have no right to create, and... Devon's voice trembles with emotion. He's never had a dream where he's felt this real before. This alive, and of course it's happening when he's feeling at his absolute worst. I just wish you were real so I could tell you how sorry I am, but I can't take any of this back. Even if we somehow make it out. And you look fine, but I know you're not fine because you're with that goddamn bear. It's quiet for a moment, the only sound being Devin sobbing. Devin, I know there isn't much I can do to convince you that I'm real. All I can say that I am real, and I love you dearly. I love you too. And yeah, Brian is hurting me, just like he's hurting all of us. What's he doing to you? What happened to me not being real? Well, just in case, are you okay? The look on Cameron's face makes Devin's stomach drop. Well, not really, no. But he's keeping me alive, so that's what's important. But you see those patterns? Yeah. Well, Brian drugged me with shrooms, and I'm tripping absolute balls right now. Hallucinogens enhance my abilities, and I think I kinda created the space. I really can't make this stuff up. Well, maybe you're right. But he drugged me too, you know. This could still all be me. You don't give psychedelics to someone you're trying to sedate. Anyway, it turns out I'm not that different from my mom. It's all arches. I see them when I take certain drugs. Devin looks up at the patterns, and for the first time he feels like this might actually be Cameron. Cameron? It's me, yes! Cameron! Oh my god, please let this be real. Baby, I'm so sorry. No, we don't have time right now. Also, I kinda read your mind, so I already know. Oh, sorry about that, by the way. It's just happening automatically. But I can sense Brian's thoughts too, and I know where you are, where the van is, that you're in a set of handcuffs, and I know where the keys are. I'll get you out somehow. Cameron, honey, please don't do anything that might get you hurt. Please. Devin sees Cameron's lips tremble. Devin, you know I can't promise that in this situation. Neither of us can, but we're doing this together. Cameron! Shit. Brian? Is he there with you? I'm gonna be fine, but I gotta go. I love you. Cameron! No, damn it, please! He crumples into the darkness, feeling helpless. He should be there with Cameron, not here, sleeping and doing nothing. We're doing this together. With a great deal of effort, Devin smothers the frustration and terror, knowing that he should have some faith in his boyfriend. If Cameron thinks he can do this, then Devin realizes he has to believe in him. But doubt that it all been real starts to creep in again, even though Cameron had convinced him at the time. So he continues to rest, waiting to see if his coyote comes to free him, and hopefully they can finally get his claws on Brian. Oh look, there's a bunch of arches in the... There's a ton of arches here. Okay. I think we're gonna end right there. Holy shit. Thank you all so much for watching me through this crazy adventure. It's been so crazy. I've just never read anything like this before in my life, but we are 100% for damn sure we have to finish this game. We have to finish the story because I really want to see where this goes. It's been real, everybody. I'll see you in the next stream. Bye bye.